Ahoy there, Captain Benzie here, coming at you with another developer Q&A video for EVE Echoes. For those of you who don't know, each week the developers of EVE Echoes, NetEase, take 4 questions posed by the community and respond to them. They then post that response to both the official Twitter and the official Facebook page. Now, I know that not everyone wants to use social media, especially for things like video games, so each week I go through these questions and their answers, and I talk about them, giving my personal opinions and thoughts for what that would actually mean for the game going forward. If you have a particular question you would like to see answered by the developers, there is a link in the description down below that you can click. It'll take you through to a Google form that you can fill in and submit your own questions to the developers. And if your question is one of the ones that gets chosen to be answered, not only do you get an answer, not only do you get featured in my awesome videos, you also get a month of basic Omega. Anyway, with that said and done then, let's jump straight into this week's developer Q&A for the week of the 8th to 14th of September. Our first question. Please allow for reprocessing of relic analyzers. I have a stack of Mark 9 relic analyzers that I can't do anything with. Cloud says, hello, thank you for your suggestion, we'll fix the problem as soon as possible. And yes, I think this is a good thing. I think that all loot when it's added should be reprocessable anyway. There's the argument to be made that, okay, yeah, but what if someone found, one of their, top tier relic analyzers and then just reprocessed it accidentally? Well, that's on them. We still have that in situation for, reprocessing any other loot. There's a part of me that thinks you could also, there's other things we could do here. The fact that the Mark 9 relic analyzers don't sell is because they don't actually do enough. Basically, when you are scanning for relics and analysing things like that, now the relic analysers and the data analysers dictate which boxes you can actually open. Now, it's very rare that you will find a difficulty 4 box, mostly it'll be 1, 2 or 3. A Mark 9 analyser can only unlock difficulty 1 and difficulty 2. I would like to see it that higher tiers of the hacking skill would allow you to increase the strength of the module you're using. So a strength 2 module with enough skills would be able to hack into difficulty 3 boxes. To me, that would be a nice way of making the Mark 9 relic analyzers actually useful, because with good skills you'd be able to open difficulty 1, 2 and 3. Who knows, when the hacking minigame is finally added to EVE Echoes, maybe that'll change things up a bit and some of these lower tier relic and data analyzers might be a bit more useful. The second question. My tutorial drone description of only mode in arena says, in order to adapt to increasingly war situation. So when will we see that war between factions, like NPC fleets fighting over controlling systems, and we fight along them based on our chosen faction, so taking part in a war on a galactic scale? Let's be honest that corporation wars are nowhere near a galactic scale as we should see in a galactic sandbox game. They look like a brawls, even those breaking the records. Oh, there's so much to unpack here, but let's see what Exile says first. We need to consider this more carefully, as it will be a big move for our game. We had discussions at our designer meeting. Now, I'm sort of all for this with addendums. Now, obviously, the lore in the EVE universe is that most of the factions have been at war in the past. Notably coming sort of to a close during the Empyrean Age. There was the whole, looking at the Caldari and the Gallente, basically the Caldari and Gallente as races both started in the same system of Luminaire. You'll find Caldari Prime and Gallente Prime there, and the Gallente discovered space travel first. They ultimately absorbed the Caldari into the Gallente Federation. The Caldari didn't like this. There was sort of a brief war of secession before the Caldari moved to sort of the Lone Trek, Citadel, and Forge regions. From there, however, a lot of distrust for the Caldari and Gallente fermented and ended up in a war, basically, between them, where Tiberius Heth led the Caldari into an occupation of Caldari Prime in the Gallente system of Luminaire. There's a big battle in EVE Online that actually played out with dust as well on the planet's surface and scarred the planet irrevocably. In fact, if you are flying to Caldari Prime in EVE Online, you will see that the planet is scarred from that battle. Obviously, the Amar and the Minmatar, there's the entire sort of the slavery thing going on there, and the war of the, I want to say the Ancients, it's not the Ancients, it's the Elder fleets and things like that, where the Minmatar basically invaded Amar space to free all of their subjugated people, bringing back the Stark Manir tribe and things like that. There's a lot of war in the history of EVE, but we're kind of at a space where currently things are pretty tenuous. It's a tenuous peace. So there needs to be a good reason for the empires to suddenly break into war. I think as well that because we all chose our factions early on, and choosing your faction in EVE Echoes is nowhere near as important as it is in EVE Online. In EVE Online, choosing your faction doesn't just dictate the graphic of your avatar, it also dictates your starting skills, because you have things like a Mar frigate, Caldari cruiser, and things like that, and you will have certain skills in those based on which race you chose at the start. In EVE Echoes, we don't have that. We just have frigate command and cruiser command and stuff like that, rather than racial based stuff. So ultimately, a lot of people chose their race just based on what corvette they wanted to be able to fly, and which graphic they liked the look of for their avatar. So if you suddenly lock people into a war, for example, a lot of people who maybe flew a Mar are now based in Malden Heath. A lot of people who rolled Caldari might be based in the Amar regions and things like that. You've got to be careful about how you do that. People need to be able to choose which faction they actually sign up for in this. I do also sort of... Let's be honest that corporation wars are nowhere near a galactic scale as we should see in a galactic sandbox game. When we had over 1,000 people in battles, how big did you want these wars? Those were big battles. War in space is not something that you just kind of throw ships at each other. There's a lot of stuff that goes on in the sidelines as well. Plus, we're getting dreadnoughts and carriers coming soon, whether or not I think they're actually useful and worthwhile adding to the game. I think that's, what are you expecting? If a battle of 1,000 players, or in certain cases upwards of 2,000, is not enough for you, then I don't think that adding the NPCs fighting each other is going to fix that. Like, genuinely, I don't know what to say here. I don't know what to say to that. It feels almost a little insulting, but I'm not going to go into that too much. I'm not against the idea of the empires actually fighting against each other. To take an aside, Infinite Lagrange recently added some chapters to the server takeovers where the privateers do actually start fighting each other, and you as the independent unions get caught up in that, and it's an awesome feeling to have all these privateer fleets sort of going against each other. Obviously, EVE Online, we have things like the Triglavian invasion, with the Triglavians and Edencom, and players can kind of support either side of that. So there is a precedent for this, and it could be really cool. I just think that if you're doing it because you want bigger battles than we've had in the Corporation and Alliance wars, I don't know what you're expecting. Anyway, let's move on from that one. Question 3, one close to my heart here. I'm wondering if the Tier 10 Hurricane Guardian replaced the Tier 10 Hurricane EWAR, or if the Tier 10 Hurricane EWAR is scheduled to go live at some point. Yeah, the more Hurricanes we have in the game, the better. And this is why, ultimately, I've got Harbinger as the front picture here. I like to play that tenuous Link game. I couldn't find a picture of the Hurricane EWAR. I did fly one at one point, and there are a couple of videos where I talk about those. They weren't properly available, no one ever got to fly them. Before we hit Tech 10, they were removed, and yes, they were replaced with the Hurricane Guardian. Anyway, we have no immediate plan to adjust the existing Tech 10 ships, but we will release Moon Tech-related content next year, mainly Moon material harvesting and reprocessing. A new series of ships will be added by then. Hurricane EWAR might be included. So we know we are getting more Tech 10 ships at some point in the future, just not anytime soon, and it doesn't look like they are adjusting the Tech 10 ships. So if we're looking for you to change a Guardian into an EWAR, I don't think that's going to happen, but I don't think that's what the person here was asking, in fairness. So the Hurricane EWAR. The Hurricane EWAR, and indeed the Harbinger EWAR, the Drake EWAR, and the Brutix EWAR were Tech 10 battle cruisers that existed in place of the current Guardians. Basically, in the previous version, the battle cruiser Guardians were things like the Prophecy, the Myrmidon, the Cyclone, and the, I want to say Ferox, it is the Ferox. And then they decided to add more Guardians at Tech 10, and I'm not sure that's really been necessary. Like, seeing the Cyclone Guardian and the Hurricane Guardian There's not a humongous difference. It's not like anyone was sitting there looking at the Cyclone Guardian going, oh my goodness, I just can't do the content I need to with this. Maybe with Capitals and Dreadnoughts coming, yeah, the Hurricane and the Drake and that are a bit more required as Guardians, but we did have EWAR. Now, the EWAR versions of these battle cruisers had better DPS than their Tech 8 variant, so the Hurricane EWAR had better damage potential than the Tech 8 Hurricane. It also had bonuses to things like target painters for Minmatar, tracking disruptors for Amar, the guidance disruptors for Kaldari, and sensor dampeners for Galente, so kind of like we have the EWAR frigates, just, actually useful. Also with a good amount of DPS. The trouble with the EWAR Hurricane, and the issue I had with it, although issue's the wrong word, is that it was a flat-out replacement for the Tech 8. I don't like this system that we have in Echoes, personally, where a ship that is a generic is suddenly worse than a specialist in every way, shape and form. So as an example, looking at the Tier 7 Cyclone. The Tier 7 Cyclone has so many capabilities. You then look at the Cyclone Guardian, the Cyclone Command. The Cyclone Command and the Cyclone are the exact same ship as far as DPS goes. The Cyclone and the Cyclone Command both have the same DPS boosts, they have the same number of high slots, all that jazz, which means they are as good as each other in regards to basic combat potential. But then the Cyclone Command also gets a smaller signature radius, faster flight speed, better tank, and the command burst boosts. So it's just a flat-out better ship. If it were up to me, I would have made it so that the Tech 8 Hurricane is the best and highest damage variant of the Hurricane. Then at Tech 9 you have the Hurricane Logistics, and at Tech 10 you have the Hurricane EWAR and the Hurricane Guardian that sacrifice that damage potential in order to perform other roles. But then you look at things like the Cyclone 2 Guardian, Cyclone 2 Command, and the Cyclone 2 Command is just flat out the best Cyclone there is. It's better than all the other Cyclones. It's a beast of a ship, in fairness. So yeah, to me, the Hurricane EWAR, it was nice to have a combat Hurricane, in fairness. As a Hurricane main on Silent Rose, I would love for Tech 10 to actually have a meaningful Hurricane for me. But I have a choice. I fly the Hurricane Guardian at Tech 10. Excellent if I want to be guarding a shield fleet, you saw from yesterday's video. If I want to be logistics, I have the Hurricane Logistics at Tech 9, but if I want actual combat with the Hurricane, I've got to go all the way down to Tech 8, and it's just massively outshined by literally any other battlecruiser at that point in time. So it feels bad. So I kind of miss the Hurricane EWAR for the fact that it was a Hurricane that you could go solo ratting in, at a high tier, and would apply nicely into a fleet, plus it had EWAR bonuses. I would love to see that return, and we've talked about moon tech and moon mining and things like that in the past. Yeah, I think that would be a cool way of doing things, and having a load of new ships that require those materials would be pretty cool. We've talked at length as well, I'm not going to go into it here, about how I would like to see most ship costs, especially at the higher tiers, shuffled a bit so they use less ISK, but considerably more ore. We need more ore sinks in the game. Finally then, question 4. Drones have a major advantage over other weapon system, as every other weapon system has a disruptor. Can adding a module that affects drone damage or at least tracking speed velocity? Wilson responds, thank you for your suggestion, we will consider adding this type of module to the next balance update. And actually, I'm going to go out on a fairly controversial limb here and say, don't. You don't need to. Drones' actual major advantage, I get that you can argue that drones have a major advantage, they definitely do. The major advantage of drones is versatility. If you're in a Dominix, you can sit there and snipe with sentry drones, and then if someone else gets a little bit too close, if a battleship gets a bit close and you want to apply more damage to it, you can swap to large drones. If someone jumps into your anomaly with you, you can swap to medium or even small drones in order to be able to apply properly to the target at hand. You also have the capability of swapping damage types. Now, if I fit large cannons to a Tempest, I can't suddenly swap them to medium cannons or small cannons, depending on the target that I want to take down. And I definitely can't suddenly swap them to lasers if I decide that actually I don't want the explosive damage, I'd rather have electromagnetic and thermal. That is something that only drones can do. They also arguably get some of the longest ranges in the game, which is absolutely insane. It's not that they don't have a disruptor that's the problem with drones, and in fact, I'm not even sure there is a problem with drones. I think that drones cost a lot more to skill into. If you want to skill into medium missiles, you skill into medium missile operation and medium missile upgrade, and bam, you pick your ship, you're done. With drones, you need medium drone operation, medium drone upgrade, and the drone skill. And those are not cheap skills. They actually are a fairly hefty skill point investment. So that's where the balancing in drones comes in. That if you want to use drones and get that versatility, then you have to go into a lot higher skill points. You'll also notice that drone DPS tends to be a lot lower than other weapon systems. Compare the Worm's damage output to any of the other faction frigates, for example. Look at, as another example, a bit more sort of recent, have a look at my video on Raman's Algos 2 Assault, and look at its DPS there compared to the one of Frosty Jack's Talwar 2 Assault. There is a massive difference. A Talwar 2 Assault using missiles gets a similar range to the Algos 2 Assault, but like a good 50% additional DPS. Drones' variety and versatility comes at the cost of additional skill points and at lower DPS. Now, I get that you're sitting there saying that they don't have a disruptor. Like, obviously every turret can be hit with tracking disruptors. Missiles can be hit with guidance disruptors. Drones have one other massive weakness that no other weapon system has. You can destroy them. If I go into PvP against a turret ship, yes, I can use a tracking disruptor, and I can neuter its ability to apply damage to me. If I go into combat against a drone ship, I can just shoot its drones. And that suddenly provides, it reduces the target's DPS, and they have to pay to replace that. If someone's flying something like Republic Fleet, I almost said Republic Fleet Ogres, Republic Fleet Berserkers, those are expensive drones, and if you destroy those, it's not like a tracking disruptor that just temporarily upsets your weapon system. Destroying drones requires that player to actually go and buy them again. Especially if you don't destroy the ship, there's no way to bring back drones. Drones aren't covered by insurance in specific. Obviously, drones that are fitted may be covered by insurance, and recently we've had drones in the hangar are covered by insurance, but the ones that just get destroyed aren't. So if, for example, I go into combat against your drone ship and you throw 8 drones at me and I destroy all of them, then I destroy your ship. Your insurance doesn't cover any of those 8 drones that I destroyed before destroying your ship. You insure the ship and you can get that back, but you still have to pay for the drones. The point I'm getting at here is that not everything needs to be equal to be balanced. You can sit there and say, oh, well, drones don't have a disruptor, like, turrets and missiles do, but turrets and missiles also don't have the capability of actually being destroyed. You can't shoot someone's missiles out of the sky. So yeah, there's that. That's another internal balancing. Drones are also lower DPS, and drones are a heavier skill point investment. So there's a lot that balances drones. Yes, they are currently one of the meta systems for doing solo PvE. They are pretty useful at defending yourself in PvP as well, but there are counters to them. There are ways to deal with this. You can just screen them off with a web of fire and keep them at range, which is kind of like a tracking disruptor again, because a tracking disruptor or guidance disruptor is going to shorten the range of something so that you can kite outside of that range. Whereas with drones, if you hit it with a web of fire, it still can't apply its damage to you. It's kind of the same thing. There are other counters for drones. They don't have a straight up disruptor, but they have other counters. Anyway, that's just my thoughts and opinions. These are, obviously, in all these videos, always just my personal thoughts and opinions. I would love to hear yours in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about these 4 questions. What questions do you have for the developers? Make sure you click that link in the description, go through, ask your questions, and win yourself a month of Omega. It's a cool way just to get some free Omega time and get some questions answered. Anyway, folks, thanks for watching this one right the way through to the end. Happy sailing, and see you in New Eden!